Now, I'm really excited to introduce our next speakers. Stephen No is a corporate and technology lawyer currently working as counsel at Rivian. Now, he is the advocacy chair of the Vietnamese Professionals Association and is the vice president of the Federation of Asian Canadian Lawyers, both for British Columbia. Now, Stephen is leading a movement called Fix Police Reporting that is, where'd my script go? There we go. That is focused on removing barriers to reporting hate crimes to the police. There we go. In this talk coming up, Stephen's going to share his own story about being a victim of a hate crime and why we need to provide a way to report hate crimes online in English and multiple languages across Canada and the United States. Now, I'm really excited to hear about all of this. He's going to be joined in conversation with our own amazing Florencia. So Florencia is a community product marketer who is based in Argentina. She's been working for the past 10 years creating consumer-centric products, product innovations, projects, and communications. Now, she believes leadership today needs to be both brave and humble, as well as having a passion to unlock the potential of individuals and teams. So I'm going to turn the floor over to you both. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Meg, for such a presentation. Hi, Stephen. So thank you so much for joining us. Can you hear me properly?
I can hear you. Yeah, I'm super excited to be here, to be joining you this morning, to be chatting with you.
Yeah, so am I. So this is great for me as well. So hopefully we'll have an amazing conversation here. So we're super grateful that you're here to share your experience with us and what you can do to make our communities safer. So to start off, tell us about your background, where did you grow up, and where your parents are from?
Yeah, I'm more than happy to. And this is going to be like a nice fireside chat between you and me, because we were just talking before this about meeting in Argentina. So I'm excited to chat with you. My background is that I'm born in Vancouver, Canada. My dad is from Vietnam and my mom is from China. And they both actually met in Vancouver. So my dad was a refugee. He escaped the war during the time and he came on a boat to Hong Kong over to Vancouver. And my mom immigrated from China to Vancouver. And funny thing, Flora, is that they actually met learning English together. And so apparently the story goes that they're waiting in line to register and neither of them speak any English. Like they're taking this like English as a second language course. And my dad just turned behind him and just started talking to her in very broken anything. I didn't even know what they talked about, to be honest with you. And that's how they met. And so they had me shortly afterwards. And so I'm born and bred in Vancouver. I've lived in different places around the world. So like in Middle East, in Europe, in the US, and Southeast Asia. Not yet South America. That's why I'm excited to chat with you as well.
So how many languages can you speak now?
To speak well, I would say 3. So English, Vietnamese, and Mandarin. But I'm also right now learning Spanish. It's not very good. I'm learning a little bit of Dutch. And in Canada, you are forced to learn French. So I guess I learned French for 6 years, but I can't say I remember very much about French.
Okay, so you definitely need to come to Argentina to practice that Spanish.
Sí.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay, would love to help with that. So please tell us about the hate crime you've experienced and what happened when you went to the police.
Yeah, so this is an interesting pivot, right?
Yeah.
We live in this society that talks about multiculturalism, right? We live in a society that embraces different views and different people. We see this in the advertisements and all that, right? I'm sure in Argentina, but also here in Canada and the US. But as many of you know, during the pandemic, there has been a rise in hate crimes. It affects our friends, our families, our colleagues, and sadly, it happened to me. So the story goes is that last year I was going for a drive and I was at an intersection and next to me I heard these two men shout like, "You effing chink." And for those who don't know, like that's an incredibly derogatory racial slur. And it was I was shocked. So I rolled down the window just to make sure if I heard it properly, or who knows, or maybe they said something else. And then I looked at them and they looked at me. You see these 2 Caucasian men in a large pickup truck. yelling at me again, the same slur, and they decided to throw this piece of garbage at me. And then they laughed and then they sped off. Now, I am obviously very shocked, right? It was such overt racism. We talk about, unconscious bias. We talk about like the subtleties, but nothing so overt in a country like Canada, like Vancouver, that's so multicultural. But I must say, I haven't shared this publicly as often, but, the first feeling, of course, there was anger, but the very first feeling was actually a feeling of shame. I thought maybe I was driving improperly. Was it the color of my skin? Did I do something wrong? And I actually thought maybe I just, whatever, right? I just wanted to shrug it off. These are just some crazies out there. And I was just, I just took it in. Fortunately, I messaged my friends and they're like, Stephen, this sucks. You have to report it, right? Like, this can't happen. And so luckily, because of the encouragement from my friends and my family, you are right. Like, I need to step up. I need to say something. And so here's where the story takes a turn, where I tried to call the police to report it. Because when you report a hate crime, the police talk about report it. The government tells us to report it. And when I tried to call, no one picked up the phone line, Florencia. No one. I was on the phone for not 5 minutes, but over 30 minutes. Can you imagine, like, on the phone for 30 minutes? If you and I work for Amazon or any other private company, they probably fire this customer service company because, like, you can't make people wait that long. So I waited and I was like, there must be another way. And so I went online to the website, to the Vancouver Police website, and I saw that there's ways to report hate crimes, but you could only report it in Chinese. Wait a second, like, I'm part Vietnamese, I speak English fluently. Are you expecting me to write down my hate crime report in Chinese? It doesn't make any sense. And so that just opened my eyes to all these barriers in the system to reporting a hate crime to the police. And it's not just in Vancouver, it's actually all across Canada and all across the United States. I haven't looked in Argentina, but I know for sure in Canada, US, you ask you to call a phone line. And that is problematic, especially when English is not your first language. And so that's really my story. And that's really why my purpose here is how do we remove barriers to reporting hate crimes in the first place? And this is really, really important to change society and stem the rise of hate crimes.
And before you've said that when you had to report this, you felt ashamed. So why was that?
Yeah, it was such a stunning experience. I think, first of all, it was shock, right? No one ever expects to be shouted at and have something thrown at them. And my story is not unique. During this whole pandemic, even just a week before, my cousin was telling me how he was going for a run and someone actually pushed him, literally pushed him, and just kept running. And like, what in the world is going on here? And so you hear these stories accumulating, right? There's so many incidents, videos, footage. And so when it happened to me as well, it's one thing to hear it in the news. It's one thing to hear it from friends. But when it actually happens to yourself as a victim, the story changes, right? It becomes so much more personal. And so I think when I was looking at it, there is a lot of research that talks about, not just hate crime victims, but actually we look at sexual assault victims, right? There's so much research. More than 50% of sexual assault cases are not reported. And the reason why is that there is that sense of, oh, it's not a big deal. Maybe I did something. And so I think part of whether or not human nature or not, we got to create an environment where it's supported and safe. And so similarly, I absolutely did feel a bit ashamed. I was just honestly very shocked. And that's often why a lot of people don't report it. It makes me really empathize and sympathize with those who just don't bother.
And why do you think that happens? I mean, you said that these hate crimes are often underreported. So why is that? And why does accurate data about hate crimes matter so much?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. And so hate crimes are first underreported, only on top. Let's say you actually get over the shame because you actually want to report it. First of all, language is a barrier to reporting hate crimes. So imagine you're a new immigrant to Canada, the United States, you don't speak English fluently. How likely is it for you to call and pick up the phone line and call the police? Like if I was in Argentina, I had to report in Spanish. Oh my God, I wouldn't even bother, right? To be honest, I wouldn't. But if there was a way for me to report it in English when I was in Argentina, I probably would, right? Because it's my own language. So first of all, we have a language barrier, right? So how do we remove that barrier? I think doing it online makes it easier because you could kind of process your thoughts. You could use Google Translate. And also you could arrange for a time to speak with the police. And so what I did is when I reported, I finally basically entered all my details in that Chinese form in English. I used Google Translate and we set up a time to chat. They emailed me back right away and we met the day afterwards and we talked and I explained the situation. But imagine if you're a new immigrant and that happens, right? At least you can do it online and you can have a translator next to you and you can have that kind of support. Now, the question, then going back to your second part of your question, why does data matter? Data absolutely matters. We live in a world where data drives decision making. And so if there's an awareness that there is a rise in hate crimes in this city or this area that's targeted to Asian Canadians or API community, like there is going to be action taken. So data drives decision making. Let's not doubt that. And so when we have accurate data, we can get the help we need. Otherwise, it's just being tucked under a rug, right? More than only 15% of hate crimes are reported. And a lot of it is because there are barriers to reporting. And if I can add one last thing to this, recently, as of last month, there was a study that came out that over 40% of phone calls go unanswered. 40%, that is 18,000 calls to the non-emergency line that went unanswered here in Vancouver. And I looked at the stats for the rest of other cities. It's also the same, right? So we have to change the system. We have to. And I offer a simple solution. It's just to offer a way to report online.
And do you have any idea why are those like phone calls unanswered?
Yeah, I love your follow-up question. Police resources are strapped. They are strapped for resources, right? There's so many phone calls coming in, whether it's assault, whether it's murder, whether it's theft, whether it's other criminal activities. And so I think when you have so many things coming in, they're just like, oh, hate crimes, let's not bother with it. But the reality is that hate crimes are a precursor to more serious crimes. So essentially, if I was someone who loved to target victims, and this is not just the Asian Canadian, Asian American API community. This is the Black community, this is the Indigenous community, Latino community, right? If I was a bully I wanted to target, I could do it now for free. Like no one's gonna catch me. Like no one's gonna report me. So you have this system where these criminals are running wild, and people can't report. And so there is various factors, but for sure there's resource straps, right? There's not enough funding. There's no way to modernize this phone call system. So that's why we have to move it online. And don't get me wrong, this is not a novel idea. There's already systems in place in the US and Canada. It's called Crime Stoppers. Like you can report crimes online on Crime Stoppers already. And in the cities of now Vancouver, Ottawa, and Montreal in Canada, you can now do it online. And so there's already systems in place to report things online. We just have to add one more line item for hate crimes. And the reason why this is really helpful is that when you do it online, it allows police to allocate resources, have translators available. Like this needs to be fixed. And this is where the crux of the issue is. We have to make it accessible. We have to remove these barriers to reporting hate crimes.
Yes, and democratic for everyone to have like the possibility. Absolutely agree. So I would like to go deeper on the status quo response from the law enforcement when it comes to hate crime reporting. So what do you think that is, this status quo? What do you think about it?
Yeah, the status quo is taken from like the 1990s, right? We're living in this society, this place where they think we're back in the 1990s where you had to pick up a phone book and like pull up the phone number of the police and give them a call, right? We are so outdated. Right? We live in 2022 where everything is modern. Like you have Amazon where you could buy things in an hour, or like in a day. Everything is like shifted, modernized, where it's online. And so the status quo right now from government and from police authorities is that, yes, you must report hate crimes. Hate crimes are underreported, report hate crimes. But the only way to report hate crimes is to call a phone line. But then no one picks up the phone. So do you see the issue here? You want us to report, the only way to report is a phone line, but no one picks up the phone. And so you end up in this situation where there's this big wall. It's like the Great Wall of China. Like, I don't know, like there's something wrong here. And so the status quo is not working. The reason why it's not working is that hate crimes are on the rise. And so we have to change. Like it's obvious. It's so obvious we need to change. Because if you keep maintaining this status quo of making people call a phone line, hate crimes are going to proliferate. It's going to rise. There's no consequences. And beyond that, I know earlier I talked about no one picking up the phone line. In some places, phone lines are closed after 5 p.m. or after 6 p.m. Or sometimes they're closed on holidays. And so how do you expect any hate crime victims to wait until the day afterwards to call? They're already ashamed to call in the first place. And now you're just perpetuating that harm. So that's the status quo. The status quo is that the system is broken. We have to find another way. And last, in many cases, the only way to report is in English or sometimes French, depending on where you are. But if we have the ability to report online in multiple languages, including Spanish, including French, including Farsi, including all these languages, then we can change the system. And again, this is possible. If you go to the Vancouver Police website, you can now, because of our advocacy efforts, you can now, Florencia, report in 14 languages. 14 languages. So this is a model that many other cities can follow along.
So that sounds like the future.
Absolutely is the future, right? This is my future state. Look, let me take a step back, right? Like this is Diversity Reboot 2022, right? We talk about identities. We talk about how do we promote and support the Asian American, Asian Canadian diaspora, right? There's a lot of talk and a lot of seminars and sessions about how do we stop hate crimes? How do we support hate crime victims? But the reality is that we have to start taking action, right? There's enough talk happening. There's way too much talk. There's too much studies and analysis, and it feels like we're just cycling in circles, right? Government is talking about, oh, we're allocating millions of dollars to support these communities. But the reality is that we need to take action, and the action will only cost you 2 hours of a computer developer. Any recent science grad can just fix a website. It doesn't require millions of dollars. It requires paying for 2 hours of time just to fix a website, to add a line. And so I think this is something that all cities can do. All police departments can start looking and thinking about, how do we remove barriers to reporting hate crimes? Because when we do that, then we actually understand how big of a problem it is. And then we can take action, we can advocate for funding. And the last point I want to add in is that, a very common counter argument, and I've spoken with the police, I've spoken with the Minister of Justice, a very common counter argument, they say, well, Stephen, if we open up online hate crime reporting, we're going to have a flood of reports coming in. Isn't that a good thing? Isn't that what we're supposed to do? If murders are happening on the streets, if people are being murdered and attacked, and suddenly people are telling you that people are getting murdered and attacked, wouldn't you want to know that so then you can start allocating resources appropriately? My intent here is to create a safe and welcoming society for everyone. And this is the first step to doing that.
Absolutely. And like a minute ago, you mentioned the diaspora. So I would like to ask you, what can those in the AAPI and the Asian diaspora community can do to help, and what can allies as well can do to help here?
Yeah, and just to call back on my first comment is that hate crimes affects everyone, right? It affects the Asian diaspora, but hate crimes also affect the Black community, the Indigenous community, the LGBT community, the Jewish community, the Latino community. It affects everyone in society. So this is not just a problem that's just one subset of our population. It's actually everyone. Like all of us are affected by this, every one of us. And so I think the first step that we can do to support for sure is, if you're down to help and support this campaign, I have a website. It's called fixpolicereporting.ca. I'll put it in the chat box, but fixpolicereporting.ca. From there, you could join our mailing list and also send a support letter. What the support letter does, it goes straight to the relevant decision makers. So right now I have it going to the Minister of Justice as a way to advocate and change the laws. So fixing and reporting is one aspect. Again, the more longer term goal is, how do we amend the criminal code, the criminal laws, to make it easier to prosecute hate crimes? There's one story I do want to share though, because this happened not too long ago, where there was a 90-year-old senior in Vancouver who was pushed to the ground, and they caught the person and they brought them to court and to trial. And it turns out that he just got off with a fine, like $100 fine, and that's it, you could go. And the reason why is they didn't see any evidence of any hate-motivated incidents. But there's video footage of him grabbing a 92-year-old man, shoving to the ground, and yelling racial slurs. Like, it's obvious there's a problem. The system is broken. I think the public is, don't get me wrong, we've already lost trust in the police system, right? And so this is just perpetuating it, and we got to find ways to fix it. And one easy way for all of us on the call and who are listening later on is, how do we amplify the voice, right? My website, Fix Police Reporting, you can send a support letter. Also, if you're part of any conferences or media, invite me. I'd be happy to speak and to share this message.
I think this message is amazing, and we've only got 5 minutes left. So I would like to open the conversation here for you to share any further message to all of the audience that is hearing us today.
Yeah, I saw a comment here from Dr. Angela Pearson. So thank you so much. I think the note that, this requirement to write a police report in Chinese this is the prime example of systemic racism. I know people don't like to hear the word racism, right? I think, I'm not racist. But if there's anything, this is the pure definition of systemic racism. The definition of systemic racism, systemic discrimination is when there's a system in place that prevents people from feeling equal, feeling like they belong, right? And the easiest system and barrier to place is language. The reason why language is important is that if we don't fluent in a language, it's hard for us to even have access to justice. And so I think it's really important to have that aspect. And I think for me, having traveled and worked in different countries, I understand how important language is. And so if I was in South America, if my Spanish was not very good, I probably wouldn't try, right? I honestly wouldn't. And there's thousands, if not millions, of visible minorities who are facing the same situation.
That's great. So thank you so much, Stephen, for your time. I will invite Meg back if there's anything else that you would like to share. But having that said, thank you so much for your time. I think this conversation has been way more than interesting, and also thank you, Dr. Angela there, that has been sharing some comments. And let me know, Meg, if there's anything else you would like to add.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump back in. Thank you so much, Flor and Stephen. Thank you, Stephen, for your transparency and your vulnerability. I can imagine it's very difficult to share something like that. So thank you so much for trusting us with that. And I'm really, really excited to see and to support your efforts, because the fact that America speaks so many different languages, but we pretend it's just English, is kind of bullshit. So cannot wait to see that see that effort grow. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm very grateful to you, grateful to Florence, grateful to the audience, and grateful for those who are watching afterwards for listening and being part of the message. Again, my intent is to create a safe and welcoming society for all.